So, can you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Okay, I'm John Paul JP Zalaquett, and I graduated from UNC in 2018, and then also stayed another year and did the Master of Accounting program there, and then I moved back last summer to Charlotte, back home, and I work at Ernst & Young, which is an accounting firm in Uptown Charlotte, and I was in an a cappella group in college, so that's my fun fact.
So cool.
Okay, I'm Georgia Kibler. I am a rising junior at UNCW. I'm majoring in film studies, and a fun fact would probably be that my favorite food is corn on the cob. In season right now. Yes, so good. So
In
good.
season.
Yeah.
Summer foods are the best. Gotta add some watermelon in there.
True.
Well, I'm so glad that you guys could come and be on the video podcast for this week. As I mentioned, this chapter is called There is No Such Thing as a Straight Line. And that is something super important to talk about in any stage of life. And as y'all could tell, JP is a little bit farther down the road than both me and Georgia. And Georgia is a year farther down the road than me. But it's so important because every stage of life has its highs and its lows. And neither of them more qualifies you or disqualifies you from how much the Lord loves you. A really key point in the chapter is to not compare your path to the path of those around you, because everyone's path looks different. Especially with us three, like we're all at different stages, so even our paths will look different in things we've gone through, experiences we've had. But like I said, nothing can more qualify you or disqualify you from the love of God and from His grace. So with that, what does it mean to be saved by grace?
I would say that what that's getting at is that the way that we live our lives is all about the heart behind what we do and why we do it. You know, you can look at it as, do these works make me who I am, which I think is something that's, it's really easy for all of us to think that way because we praise like good works or achievements in our culture. But then the flip side of that is looking at it is that these good works are a product of knowing that it's not about me, I'm not the one in control, like I'm doing this because I'm glorifying the Lord in what I do.
To reiterate what JP just said, I think that growing up I've really become used to like wanting works to kind of prove my value. But what's cool about our faith is that, you know, there's nothing that we can do to save ourselves. It's purely relying on God's grace and forgiveness to save us. And so I think that's really important to remember. And, you know, when you mess up, it's just such a blessing to have God's grace there to kind of say, I know you're not perfect, but that's why I sent my son to save you. And yeah.
It's always easy for us to mess up because we are born sinners. And also like in college, and the more you're around peers who are maturing and figuring out who they are, it's also easier to mess up because you're around so much peer pressure that you want to be able to fit in, but that's not the point. So I think this next question, what does it mean to be saved by grace in times when you sin and mess up? What does that look like? Like, how do you move past guilt and shame, know you're saved by grace, but not to let like your jaggedy line define you?
So I think a lot of people tend to view Christianity as like a set of rules, which the law is a huge part of Christianity. But I think what people don't realize is that, you know, accepting Jesus is so freeing because it does take away all of our mess ups and all of our guilt and shame and our sin. And that's only possible through His grace. So it is a really freeing thing to kind of be able to give that up to Jesus and say, you know, I know I'm not enough, I know I mess up, but thank you for being willing to take that on for me.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it kind of connects to what I was saying before about how it's not our behaviors and our actions that define us. You know, even though it's really easy to look at those and say like, oh, like, you know, this is who JP is because he blah, you know, it's like, but when you look at the flip side of that in terms of when those things are shameful or sinful, those are not the things that define me, you know, they're not, when they're good, when my behaviors or my actions are good, they don't define me. When they're bad, they don't define me.
That's so encouraging because it's like this ultimate cancelization of like Jesus' death cancels the need to be perfect and do good works. And then it also cancels our sin, like it removes that from us. And it's like his death and his resurrection gives us life and covers all of that. So in addition to not being a grace abuser and God's grace, the theme of the chapter is there's no such thing as a straight line, a common theme for anyone in any season, but especially in this time of either picking your major or thinking of things for the future, or like JP, when you graduate with job searches and stuff, there's also no such thing as a straight line. And it is okay to not know what you're gonna do because the Lord has a plan, and that's greater sometimes, and sometimes he doesn't show it to us right away because where would the faith be in that? So describe that in your life, just how there's no such thing as a straight line, but just kind of walking in faith and trusting.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly went through that process when I was applying to college and just like not knowing where I was going to go. I think I decided where I was going to college the day before the national deadline, and I ended up at UNC. But really, I think the first time that I truly did not feel in control of what was next was when I was graduating from college. So that was back in spring of 2018, and I was graduating with a degree in music, but I knew that I didn't want to do anything with music. I just didn't feel like those gifts were going to lead to something that was like a profession for me, so I wasn't looking at, furthering that. So I had myself in this position where I was like, okay, I'm just going to, right now there are quite a few doors that are open. I could go a lot of different directions, and I don't really know, and I did not feel in control at all. It was like I can't make a door open for me, and so I just kind of had to be faithful to what was laid in front of me at that time. And so I remember I applied to a job. I applied to, it was like, I guess, a corporate job, and then another job opportunity was like Teach for America, and like being a teacher. And I was like, maybe people had kind of spoken that affirmation to me, like, you should be a teacher growing up. And I was like, okay, like this is a really cool opportunity to do that. And then I also applied to grad school, and I mean, those are just three very different things. But ultimately I said, you know what, like, I'm just gonna move forward with as far as I can, put my heart into all three of these things. And it was hard because two of those doors closed. The teaching opportunity and the job opportunity did not work out for me. And it was hard, but at the same time, I'd never felt such peace in knowing like the Lord clearly has a plan for me, and that's going to grad school, because that's the only door that's left. And so it's kind of cool to know, like, you don't have to have it figured out. You don't have to go into ministry to be able to worship the Lord and like what you do. There are so many, like, with the workforce, which I'm now in, that was a pretty straight line for me from grad school, but it's like that is like a mission field, like a huge mission field, and it's like all around us. And so that was just a time that I really felt Lord's provision in amidst that zigzag line of what's next.
That's so cool. I love that because you're probably feeling so uncertain as all these doors are closing, but it leaves you with one. And as you chose to just be faithful and walk in what the Lord had provided, he showed you, but you had to take steps first, which is cool. And kind of the same thing for me as well, just with, I've been in college for 1 year and I've already transferred. Like, that's okay. I maybe had a rough time, but I was able to experience the Lord's peace and faithfulness and see his plan in a way that I've never in my whole life. And so I think the uncertainty is okay. And it sounds like for JP and me, it led to some of like the most clarity in our life, and that's a good thing. So yes, you will be good, you will make it, even in your uncertain plans. Georgia, now you describe a little of what that zigzag line of relationships kind of looks like.
Yeah, so I think, I really liked how the chapter really talked about how your faith walk can be a really kind of weird path of ups and downs and zigzags. And I feel like that is also reflected in the relationships we have here on earth with other people. And, relationships can kind of go through, slow periods and stagnant periods and periods of flourishing and happiness and sadness at the same time. And so I think for me, especially over this past year, just like figuring out deep and meaningful relationships that I want to commit to and put my whole self into. And I think those, in a way, do mirror, my relationship with God, because unlike relationships here on earth, like, people are going to let me down and not give as much as I'm giving, or just take and I give, or, they give and I take. But my relationship with God, like, He is, constantly giving grace and love. And so I think that that's something that we can be hopeful kind of about, and also just thankful for, that He just has this constant overflowing grace for us, and just to try and return that as much as we can.
That's awesome. I love that. So yes, don't be discouraged. Don't look down on yourself actually do look down on yourself, knowing that we are not perfect people at all, but look up at the amazing, steadfast love and faithfulness of the Lord, knowing that your zigzag path does not define you, Jesus does. So I'm going to leave you guys with that, and thank you both so much for being on today's video podcast episode, and I will see you next week with a new special guest.